Hi guys, welcome back to my podcast. So, in this podcast, I want to talk about education. Yeah, for a long time ago, I did not really think education was something very important. When I was younger, especially when I was still in school, my way of thinking was actually very simple. I thought that after graduating, the most important thing was not continuing my studies. What mattered most to me was getting a job as soon as possible and earning my own money. At that time, I think having money looked like freedom. I imagined that if I could work right after school, I would not need to depend on anyone anymore. I could buy the things I wanted, help my family a little, and feel proud of myself because I would already be earning something. In my mind back then, that felt enough. I did not really think about college, higher education, or learning beyond school. To be honest, I used to think education was only about passing exams and then finishing assignments and getting grades. Once school was over, I thought maybe that was the end of it. But as I grew older, I slowly started to realize that I was seeing education in a very narrow way. One day, my mother said something that stayed in my mind until now. She told me that if I choose to work without continuing my education, I might mostly depend on my physical energy. She said that maybe I will only use a small percentage of my brain, while most of the work would depend on my strength and endurance. At first, I did not fully understand what she meant. I remember thinking, but work is still work, right? As long as I earn money, what's the problem? But over time, I began to understand her point. The world today is very different from the world our parents grew up in. Everything moves fast, information is everywhere. Every day we see news, opinions, trends, and advice from social media, the internet, and people around us. Sometimes the information is useful, but yeah, sometimes it is misleading, and sometimes it is completely false. That is when I realized something important. Education is not only about memorizing facts or collecting certificates. Education trains us to think. It teaches us how to ask questions. It teaches us how to understand the difference between truth and opinion. And most importantly, education helps us become people who are not easily fooled. I think that is one of the biggest challenges today. A lot of people can speak confidently, but not everything they say is true. A lot of things look convincing online, but not all of them are real. Without critical thinking, it becomes very easy to believe something just because many people say it. That is why now I understand what my parents really meant when they encouraged me to seek higher education. It was not simply because they wanted me to get a degree, it was not only because they wanted me to have a better job. What they truly wanted was for me to have a better way of thinking. They wanted me to learn how to solve problems, how to make wise decisions, and how to face life with more understanding. The older I get, the more I realize that money is important. Of course, we need money to live, we need money to survive, right? But money alone does not automatically, yeah, I mean, like, but only money does not automatically make our life easier, right? If we don't know how to think, how to choose, and how to understand the world around us, that is why my perspective has changed a lot. Now, when I think about education, I do not really think about school buildings, textbooks, or exams. I think about growth. I think about learning how to see things more deeply. I think about becoming someone who can adapt to change. And I think about having the ability to stand on my own, not only physically but mentally. If I compare who I was before and who I am now, I can honestly say that my understanding of education has become much broader. Back then, I thought education was something I could leave behind once school ended. Now I believe education is something that shapes the rest of our lives. It shapes how we think. It shapes how we respond to challenges. It shapes the kind of person we become. And maybe that is the biggest lesson I have learned. Working can help us earn money, but education can help us understand how to live wisely in a world that keeps changing every single day. So, yeah, that's all for me. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye, guys!